Hi, I'm Mark Mazzaferro, Public Information Officer for the City of Vacaville, and this is the first episode of On the Beat with Vacaville Police Chief John Carli. John, thanks for taking some time out of your day to be here. As I mentioned, this is the first episode. You know, we did quite a few shows with your predecessor, Rich.
Yes.
Rich Word, and we even did a couple with Randy Ulibarri. But we called that word on the street too because we couldn't figure out anything to go with Ulibarri. Didn't really work. And, you know, word on the street is, you know, kind of cop lingo, but without a guy named Word, it doesn't make any sense.
That's right.
So we came up with On the Beat with John Carli. Thank you for being here. First of all, officially on the record, congratulations on being named the Chief of Police. Clearly a crowning achievement in your long career as a police officer. Tell us about that. How did that feel? What was that moment like when you got the call and it was, John, you're the one?
Well, it was quite surreal. I happened to actually be out of town at the time and flew up for a final interview and with Laura, our city manager. And it was a thrill. It was for me, it was just an unreal moment at that time. And I'll never forget, probably within the first few days, just one morning going out for a jog, and just about a few minutes in, just stopped and thought, what am I into now? And it became very real. Very exciting though. So that was in early March, and so then the promotion was in April. So it's been about 100 days.
So that's correct. I'm glad you mentioned that, because this really, the focus of this episode is your first 100 days as Chief of Police, give or take a day or two. When you started out as a police officer, did it ever enter your mind, I'm going to be the Chief of Police someday?
Never. It never did. I got into law enforcement in 1989. Vacaville hired me, trained me, put me into an academy, and over the course of my career, increased my education, went to school, got multiple degrees, up to the point where I ended up finally with a master's degree, but got to experience things in my career as a canine officer, field training officer, eventually working into investigations. And then somewhere around the early 2000s thought, you know, I'm not as junior anymore, and I'm starting to get older, and the logical step was moving into management and supervision, and that's when I became a sergeant. And so I never really saw it coming until maybe about the last 3 or 4 years. I thought, there's enough time in my career, and there just might be an opportunity. You just never know. And of course, about a year ago, it became very real to me that this was a possibility. So, but I never saw it when I was young. I was around family that were in management and law enforcement, but for some reason I didn't set my sight on that. I wanted to just enjoy being a police officer over the years, and did so for sure.
Well, and that kind of begs the question, at some point, you can't chase bad guys anymore, right? I mean, just physically. I mean, you're in great shape, and you know, you got a full head of hair. Not that has anything to do with policing.
It's going grayer, though.
Yeah, well, yeah, Lee, I'd rather have some go gray than none at all. But just the physical demands of the job make it tough to, you know, hop over fences and run down bad guys and all that stuff. And, you know, at some point, you got to look at alternatives, right? I mean,
sure. The role clearly has shifted, and for the last couple of years I worked, you know, at a top management level, but just not the chief. So as a commander, I was the SWAT commander, so I was involved, but it's different than putting on all the gear when you're the decision maker. You know, but you hope that you never forget what it takes. I can tell you, very interesting, it seems like while we've given up most of the day-to-day duties of policing the streets or catching bad guys, that's not to say that it doesn't occasionally happen. As some people may know, even earlier this year, our command staff made an arrest because of a pursuit on the freeway. And as recently as last week, I was on my way into work. I had a few meetings to go to. It was a day that very similar to today, wearing a uniform, and somebody cut me off. And still having the ability to make a traffic stop, I did. And I cited the driver, and ultimately passenger had warrants, and so people went to jail. And so it's interesting when you hear someone say, well, you know, aren't you the chief? Don't you have something better to do? Well, not until you just about ran me off the road. So I guess
everything was good until you cut me off.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, you know.
Yeah, so on occasion that happens, but my daily activities really are charting the course and managing people, hiring, and developing strategies for how we're going to keep the community safe. And so that's most of my focus today.
See, and I think that's every driver's dream. Not to belabor this, I gave a guy a citation, but I mean, I got people cut me off all the time, and I'm like, God, I wish I could just pull them over. You can do that.
That's right.
That is cool, man.
Yes.
All right, but so you've got a vision for how the department's going to move ahead. I don't want to discount, what your plans are, but I mean, generally speaking, you took over a great department, right? I mean, it's not like we have this huge crime problem and all these other issues to deal with. So you've got a really good starting point, don't you?
Extreme perspective, having come up through the ranks, knowing staff, those that have retired recently to those that are coming on board, there's a sense of true understanding and perspective. And so having that, I would like to say that I had a hand, even though I wasn't the chief until recently, in the development and growth and strategy, but to be in the position to chart the course and, so to speak, be the captain on the ship, not for any personal ego, but truly a desire to see what we can accomplish, because it is a good organization. The police department here in Vacaville enjoys a great relationship with the community. Very high concentration of employees that live and work here in town. I think that's well known within the city. And everyone it's personal, and they have a stake in it. And so for that, it's been a very positive and beneficial thing. So I took over a great organization, not without challenges because of our economic downturn in the last 6 or 7 years, but with that, having an idea where we need to go.
And that, you mentioned the economic downturn and how things are slowly, but certainly surely improving financially. It's going to allow you to hire a few more officers, replace some equipment that maybe is past its useful life.
We've seen a few of those cars.
Yeah, that's exciting though.
Yes,
it's really cool to be able to take over at a time where we're back on the upswing again.
That's right.
And so, what can you share with us, if anything, about you've been in office for 100 days.
That's what it feels like sometimes.
Right.
But yes.
So what can you tell us about the first 100 days and then beyond?
Very interesting. Within the first week, it probably surprised some people who thought, wow, the chief's moving awfully quick. But again, plans are laid well in advance, and having processes, especially in public safety, promoting a captain and 2 lieutenants so that there was true succession behind my promotion. Not having had a captain in 15 years, and we've had a second in command, but truly to be in that position so that we could move forward. Creates more vacancies in the organization, which creates excitement, a desire for people who really want to be on this team, stepping up into opportunities for promotions to sergeant, and movement within the organization, looking at our specialized units. The good news is we did not dismantle this organization in the economic downturn. We went lean, but so did every other department in the city. So focusing on what we can sustain, so that when it's time to grow again and strategically rebuild and do things sometimes in a different way, but effectively providing the service. So the positives really were being able to finally get to replace some vehicles. And while it was authorized right about a year ago, the process of moving into the new Ford vehicles that are more the hybrid that you see that CHP has, with our new logo and design, just really does provide a shot in the arm, if you will, because you need safe vehicles. Police vehicles are not just Code 3, they're high-speed pursuit performance vehicles. So that's a positive. The first one rolled off even last week. Showed it around a little bit, but
who's driving that first new vehicle, John?
Hasn't been issued yet.
I thought I saw somebody in it the other day, but
yes, I took it for a drive.
Oh, that's right.
I
remember now. Yeah, of course, the chief gets to drive the new car.
I needed to see and test it out.
Shakedown drive. Yeah,
that's right. And partly is because you get the first one off the line, and you want to make sure it's right, because all the rest afterwards are going to be. That's the template.
Modeled after this one,
right.
Sure.
So you'll see you'll see a bit of a newer fleet in the very near future, and that's the strategies that been supported by the council, but finally, those are the positives. And so when you think also of the things that are going on in the organization, there's a lot of change in the supervision and command structure. They're not new to the organization. These people who've been with us for 15, 20 years.
Sure.
And so they're in this position to step up. And so that's a very exciting thing. And honestly, it's an interesting place to be, where you put people in a position to say, if you could make the changes, provide the feedback. And so the organization, from the top down, bottom up, has gone through an analysis phase, and now it's going through a recommendation phase. Now clearly it's like any other department. It takes money, and it takes a strategy for moving forward as the city becomes more economically viable. But we're on the right track. We're very much on the right track.
Well, and then you mentioned about, having people in certain positions. It was a little over a year ago where we were over at the Opera House, and we did the interview with the chief, and we were talking about succession planning, and so much has happened.
Yes.
Matt was the new guy, Matt Leiden.
That's right.
And now he's the senior lieutenant in the department, and
Yes.
and then you got Denise Quatman and
Mark
Mark
Donaldson.
Donaldson
Yes.
now, and then so many folks now are going to move up into the sergeant position, but we've said this a million times on this show. The department's got great personnel and great hands. To go back just for a minute to the new Fords, not that I've ever been in the back of a police cruiser, but those got a lot of legroom back there. They're very comfy for.
They actually do.
Yeah.
You wouldn't think a vehicle like that's
not built up for comfort,
be
but
roomy, but
yeah.
I've worked the city for a long time, and I've gone from the Dodges to the Caprice to the Ford Crown Vics to this. And I got into it the other day because I wanted to feel not that I ever want to be in the back seat of one, but how, to those who have to be out in the street every day and deal with, transporting a prisoner, I was surprised at how roomy. There's headroom, there's knee room, there's foot room. It's comfortable. Not that you're trying to create a comfort environment, but you do want it to be realistic and reasonable.
Yeah, I've been in the front seat of police cars. There's no room in there, man. And those look,
They're
comfortable.
Roomy. They are.
I mean, I can't imagine being in one of those cars, God forbid, and having an accident. The old ones, because you're like this already, and you're thinking, I'm getting in a Crown Vic, it's a big car. Nah, man, between the terminal and this and all the equipment and all the radios, you're and I'm a big guy. Maybe that's part of the problem. But I digress. Enough about cars and comfort. It's just I think a lot of people are in the community and are certainly excited that you got this job. Because what we said. The department, the community knows you. You know the community. You clearly get it, and that believe it or not, I was part of the interview process. That came shining through during the interviews. When it's all said and done, you think to yourself, how could we not pick this guy?
Yeah.
So clearly a testament to your ability as a police officer and your knowledge of the community. It was exciting to be a part of that. It was very neat to go through that process.
I'm glad it was exciting for you. I was on the other side of it.
Yeah, well, it was exciting to see you squirm a little bit. Actually, it was like, hey, look at John. I finally got him. On the other hand. But you know what I mean.
I do.
I've been involved in lots of interviews, not at this level. So it was neat to be able to participate and see different styles, different personalities, and know knowing what I know about the department. I've been here almost 8 years. There's no way we could have not picked you. I don't want to make this the John Carli testimonial, but it's true. I mean, if the community has any concerns, they need to put them aside, and I doubt that anybody would. So
I've had nothing but positive feedback from the department to the community to just working closely with all staff throughout the city, and it's just my philosophy as a human being and it's something we've talked extensively even within the organization in the first few months is treating people with value and respect internally equates to what you do on your job, and we're a service delivery industry, and so it's all about how you treat people. You can do your job technically, but it's also having the capacity to understand what it means to truly provide good customer service.
Right. So here we are. Your first 100 days are just about over, and that's always used as kind of a yardstick for what you've done and maybe a look into the future. So what does the future hold for you and the department? I mean, what can you share with us without?
Well, very interestingly, the next 3 years is probably when you start looking at strategic planning, anything beyond 36 months in today's economy and today's society gets to be a little iffy. It's hard to predict past that. But internally, the key is making sure that our specialized units and our ability to be a full-service police department for a full-service city, there are some constraints. Some of them have to do with staffing, and no different than anywhere else. But it's learning how our efficiencies can make us better, but not losing the hometown feel touch. There's something about when you call the police, you're going to get a live person, and when there's a need, you're going to see someone in the community that's going to respond and making a difference. And that's what makes us different. It doesn't mean we're better than anyone else, but we stand out because that we focus on that, and that is something that I expect is that we continue to do that. So the key is how do we strategically rebuild. We're hiring 6 officers right now. The goal is to anticipate our vacancies more quickly and to respond as the economy is turning and getting us healthy again when it comes to staffing.
It's tough though, because you talk about we're hiring 6 guys, but how many folks have retired? I mean, it seemed like I mean, there are people who have promoted up and retired since I've been here.
Yes.
It's like I can name 5 or 6 different guys who went from sergeant to lieutenant and then out the door, or lieutenants when I got here and they're all gone. The whole command staff is new. The
challenge that is misunderstood by most is it's not as if you can just hire someone and they're working tomorrow. If they're experienced in the profession and they come to Vacaville, it still takes about 4 months, and that's after they're hired. Prior, it usually takes 2 to 3 months to get them hired. So when you see that there's an anticipated vacancy, that's a half a year. For somebody who's beginning the profession, it's a year. So somebody all of a sudden says, I'm retiring in 2 weeks. That hole may not be filled for 6 months to truly backfill. And so trying to navigate through that when we are at a compressed staffing level is it'll be important for us to project what these will look like moving forward.
Yeah, and that's something we talked about a lot, in previous years was succession planning. And we're kind of getting back to that now. Because in the past, the last 3 or 4 years, somebody leave and it was like, well, we're not replacing them. There's no plan. We didn't need a plan because there was nobody to replace them with anyway.
That's
so
right.
It was like, guess what you get to do now? His job and your job. Fortunately, those things are changing. And if there's an area where you can't have that much overlap, in my humble opinion, it's public safety.
That's correct.
You can only carry so many people down the ladder. You can only do so much as one person, and then it's not safe for anybody. So,
and I would say the biggest challenge for that is when you live in the community and you're invested in the future of Vacaville, and you see some of the trends, such as an increase in crime because of releasing of prisoners and a decreasing in staffing, not just for our department, but for virtually every department out there. That doesn't mix. You got increase in crime, decreasing staffing everywhere, and how do you stay on top of that? And so really trying to have the strategy of making sure that we don't lose what we have here.
Right. Well, it's been a good first 100 days as far as I'm concerned.
It has.
I opened my mouth the other day, and I will never do that again. I used the Q word. I don't even want to say it on camera now. You think I would know better, but since then, we're kind of back to normal. But
not like anyone's superstitious or anything.
No, God, no. You're right. Knock on wood. But anything you want to say in closing in your first episode of On the Beat with John Carli?
I can tell you it's been a humbling experience. The question sometimes that somebody asks is, well, is it everything that you thought it would be? And my answer really is that and more. The things you learn about yourself, you work 7 days a week now. This is not something that you just sign up for lightly. You have to recognize there is a real responsibility. And a piece of advice that a chief gave me in the last 6 months was, just remember, you no longer have the right to think out loud because you might chart a course in a different direction just because you'd like to think out loud. So it's it's interesting in what it entails, but I will tell you it's a tremendous responsibility, and I'm humbled by it. But I'm enjoying it. I really am.
Good. Well, glad to hear it. I'm extremely happy you got the job, as I know many people are. And again, thank you for taking a little time out of your day and sharing your thoughts with us. And look forward to more episodes where we dive into the meat of what you guys deal with on a daily
I too am
basis.
looking forward to it. So thanks, Mark.
Thank you, John, and thank you for watching the first episode of On the Beat with Vacaville Police Chief John Carli.